So maintaining sleep can be very, very difficult. Sometimes we might wake up and we might not be able to fall back asleep. And those two things, either independently or together, can create an experience of insomnia. And it can be difficult to really think about what might be impacting your ability to either fall asleep or to stay asleep. And so what we really want to think about is this 30-minute rule. If you're in bed for longer than 30 minutes without falling asleep, that's when we want to maybe take some kind of action. One of the recommended actions is to get up and out of bed, and that might be counterintuitive, but what we want to do is start to have our bodies and minds reassociate the bed with a place where we sleep, not where we lie in bed for hours and hours without being able to sleep. So if you're lying in bed for longer than 30 minutes, the recommendation is to actually get up and out of bed, go to some place with low light, and do something very non-stimulating. So don't do something super exciting or stimulating, but maybe read a book or a magazine, something in low light. Don't get on your electronic devices because you don't want the blue light to stimulate the wakefulness system in your body. But do something that's calming, maybe a cup of chamomile tea. And when you start to feel sleepy again, then what you can do is your same bedtime ritual that you always do. So brush your teeth again, wash your face again, and get back into bed. And that's going to start to signal your body that it's time to go to sleep. It's time to initiate sleep. So we want to start thinking about, okay, a bed is a place that we use for sleep and sexual activity only. That's all we're doing in bed. We're not playing on the phone or on our devices or watching TV. We're just going ahead and we're using the bed for those two things. And what's important to think about is that the type of insomnia that you have might change over time. Sometimes you might have difficulty initiating sleep. Sometimes you might have difficulty maintaining sleep, and those things are variable based on what's going on in your day, in your life, in your body. Insomnia is actually the most frequent health complaint following pain and headaches in polls across America. So insomnia is a very common complaint, but it really does strike people who are experiencing cancer quite frequently because there's a different type of relationship with sleep that can be impacted by treatment, by scanxiety, by all types of different stressors. So it's really important to think about what's happening in my life today that's interrupting my ability to either initiate sleep or maintain sleep. There's several different stages in sleep. The most vital stage in sleep is the deep sleep stages. Now, the deep sleep stages are prioritized when you're not getting enough sleep. Ideally, all of us would love to sleep, 7 hours or something in that range, but getting even 5.5 hours is sufficient to get through the day. And our body, when we have a sleep deficit, will prioritize the type of deep sleep we need. And notoriously, we're really bad at estimating how much sleep we're getting. And even the devices that some of us might wear when we're sleeping at night might be not actually correct, because there might be light sleep, kind of that twilight between sleeping and waking, and we're not sure if we're actually asleep or if we're awake. So we're not really good historians about our own actual sleep. So we look at this and we look at all these stages, And we think about the fact that we spend about half the night in the lighter sleep stages and 1/4 of the night in the deep sleep. So even if we're getting about 5.5 hours of sleep, we can still get sufficient restorative deep sleep, and that can sometimes be enough. So insomnia and cancer, as we're saying, there are so many nuances to how our sleep is impacted by cancer. If steroids are being prescribed, that can really, really impact sleep more than a lot of other substances. But treatment can impact our ability to sleep. It can create stress. Stress definitely 100% impacts our ability to sleep. And hospitalization is any hospitalization, anybody who's been hospitalized know that a hospital is the worst place to try and get any kind of solid, deep, consistent sleep. It's counterintuitive, but waking up with the cleaners and the blood draws and all of the things that happen is there's no consistent sleep that's available during a hospitalization. And diagnosis and treatment related stress, like we're talking about, can really impact our ability to let our minds rest when we get into bed. And so stress management becomes a key tool in the ability to develop good sleep skills. The location of tumors can create pain, making it really difficult to sleep or find a position that's comfortable to sleep for a lot of people. And again, anxiety, right? Anxiety about scans or test results or biopsies or procedures. The anxiety that is associated with that actually coined or created the term scanxiety. It's a thing that we know in the cancer community that exists, is that just preparing for that, even if it's once every 3 months or once every 6 months or more frequently, just the idea that you have those scans coming up can create a lot of stress and really disrupt our ability to sleep. The other things that might impact our ability to sleep can be night sweats. So if night sweats are an issue, and hormonal disruption can also be an issue. So if you're taking things that impact testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, that induce menopause. So all of these things can certainly contribute to the challenges around sleeping. So insomnia, it's a common response to stressful life events. And insomnia is considered chronic only if it lasts for more than 1 month and if it persists in the absence of stressors. Thoughts and behaviors that we have can actually strengthen or increase the insomnia. So this is an important thing to think about, is that what we think and how we behave impact what happens with our sleep. So if we're lying in bed ruminating and worrying, oh, I'm never going to get to sleep. I have this thing I have to do tomorrow. I'm going to be so tired. I'm not going to be able to function. It's going to be so difficult. If I'm lying in bed telling myself that, oh my gosh, this is happening again. This is never going to work. I can't do anything. If we're telling ourselves these things, those thoughts, which are called negative sleep thoughts, actually impact our ability to sleep. So speaking of thoughts and behaviors, so cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia is based on thinking about our cognitive or our thoughts and our behaviors and how those impact our sleep. And so with the CBT technique, or the cognitive, the thought and behavioral techniques, we can actually learn how to replace our negative sleep thoughts with positive sleep thoughts and with positive behaviors. So not only changing our thoughts, but our behaviors, like the 30-minute rule. If we're in bed longer than 30 minutes, that's a behavior that we have agency and control over, where we can get out of bed, do something differently until we're tired enough to sleep. And with our thoughts, we can actually look at, well, what thoughts am I having right now? Instead of just letting them go on and on and on like a freight train, we can say, hey, what thought did I just have? Is that a positive sleep thought or a negative sleep thought? So what is happening right now? So starting to be inquisitive and curious about what we're doing can contribute to some skills that can be built to improve sleep. So the sleep cycle and the wakefulness cycle are what we're seeking to balance out. So our bodies have a sleep and a wakefulness system and drive. So usually for most people, the wakefulness system is really dominant for about 2/3 of the day. So what, 24 minus 8, 16 hours of the day. The wakefulness system is really what's meant to be driving our bodies, right? Now, with that being said, with cancer treatments, certainly there can be fatigue from radiation, fatigue from treatments, changes in our energy in our body. And so just noticing that the balance for sleep system to wakefulness system is about 16 hours for wakefulness and about 8 hours for the sleep system to kick in. So as I mentioned, our thoughts and habits can disrupt this balance in the sleep drive and the wakefulness system. And so what happens is that the wakefulness system becomes too strong. So what we're seeking to do with these thought and behavioral techniques is to bring those two systems back into balance. So we're looking at about 16 hours of wakefulness system and 8 hours of the sleep system. So when there's an imbalance, there's a high likelihood that sleep's going to be more challenging. And when we can find the balance, it really increases the likelihood that we'll be able to sleep and that insomnia will start to recede. So the first skill I'm going to talk about right now, it's called cognitive restructuring, which is talking about the positive sleep thoughts and the negative sleep thoughts. So we're going to go a little bit more in detail into this technique. So cognitive restructuring involves, first, as I mentioned, recognizing the thoughts that we're having, and then changing our likely inaccurate thoughts or unhelpful thoughts about sleep. So if we think about how we want to characterize our thoughts or our negative thoughts, oftentimes our negative sleep thoughts include the effect of not sleeping on our overall health. So in reality, not sleeping, probably the greatest immediate effect is that we might have a lower mood the next day. We might be a little bit tired or cranky or snappy or irritable, but that generally is the biggest impact, is the impact on our mood when we're not having consistent sleep. And then if we think that we're not going to get anything done, I'm not going to be able to do my job, things aren't going to happen, I have to pick this person up, I have to take this person there, I have to get myself somewhere. So those thoughts can spiral. And so starting to pause those thoughts and find another way to replace those kinds of negative thoughts with an alternate thought that is more positive. And then, as I mentioned, our subjective estimates of sleep. So if we think I only got 2 hours of sleep, well, that may not be including the time you spent in bed in perhaps light sleep or light slumber. And we just aren't good at knowing when we're in these different lighter phases of sleep or in the deep phases. So reframing in our mind these thoughts of, oh, I only got 2 hours. Well, instead of saying I only got 2 hours, perhaps I got more than 2 hours. I don't really know. It's that simple. It's just taking a negative thought and replacing it with something that's believable. We're not trying to do like positive affirmations or anything like that. We're trying to take a thought that's negative that keeps us feeling poorly and replace it with something that is slightly more positive. So negative sleep thoughts, or NSTs. They're the inaccurate or unhelpful thoughts about sleep. And at bedtime or during the night, the NSTs can cause negative emotions. And when we have these negative thoughts and then the emotions get triggered, it makes it much more difficult to fall asleep once our emotions are engaged around these negative sleep thoughts. And what happens is then our body starts to respond in this stress response, meaning it starts to release stress hormones into the body, which disrupts our sleep cycle even more. So NSTs that occur upon awakening and during the day, they also contribute to impaired mood and daytime functioning. So these negative sleep thoughts can occur not only in bed, but also throughout the day when we're not getting enough sleep. So if we think about that, we can have these negative sleep thoughts throughout the day. So we start to develop, the hope is that we start to develop the skill of replacing the negative sleep thoughts with positive sleep thoughts any time of the day. So if we think about that, and I know in the room they might not be able to hear you, but does anybody have an example of some negative sleep thoughts that they've had about not being able to sleep at night? Anything come to mind? Anybody have an example? Yeah. I'm never going to be able to fall asleep. That's a good one. In the back. I'm going to be miserable. I'm never going to fall asleep. I'm going to be miserable. And your hand was up?
Having stuff to do the next day, similar to hers, except that it just makes it worse because I can't, and I won't be able to sleep and function. I'll have to sleep in a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So how many of you do these thoughts sound familiar to? Is everybody in the room raising their hands and shaking their head? Yeah, and online too. And if you want to chat in some of your thoughts too. So here's the interesting thing. As I mentioned, the research indicates that core sleep of 5.5 hours is what many individuals need to maintain performance the next day. And that's probably a shocking number. I think a lot of people think we need 7 or 8 hours. And as we age, we actually need less and less time asleep. And so if we think about that, well, okay, so 5.5 hours is the number that I can be okay with and function. Well, that might be new information. So with this, I'm never going to fall asleep. Negative sleep thought. Then if we can reframe that as, well, even if I don't fall asleep until 1 a.m., if I get 5.5 hours of sleep and wake up at 6:30, I might be a little tired, but I might be okay. So the main effect of sleep loss is reduced alertness. The effect of moderate sleep loss is inconsistent. There's not a lot of consistency in that. And of course, stressful events can actually be the cause of some of the effects of sleep loss. So stress is actually more disruptive to health and performance than sleep loss. So if kind of the underlying theme of this is that if we can find a way to manage our stress, that likely will have a positive effect on reducing our insomnia or our challenges falling and initiating and maintaining sleep. So there's a lot of studies and there's so much information out there. And I know we have a short amount of time, but there's the book, this topic and presentations based on a book called Say Goodnight to Insomnia by Greg Jacobs. So if you would like more detail on some of the studies and research behind what we're talking about today, this is drawn from his work. So the presentation we're talking about today. It's called Say Goodnight to Insomnia, and it's by Greg Jacobs, Greg with 2 G's. So mood change is also a major effect of insomnia, as I mentioned. So frustration, unhappiness, fatigue, irritability, restlessness, lack of motivation, lack of interest. And I'm sure there's more examples of the types of mood impacts that we see when we're not sleeping as well as we'd like to be. And 2 factors that most impact mood are the cumulative amount of time and the quality of sleep, and the negative sleep thoughts that are actually in response to the loss of sleep. So it's not only that we're losing sleep, but it's also the stress that we create by having negative thoughts about not sleeping. Is that new information for anybody? Just understanding that the thoughts that we have impact our stress levels and make our sleep worse. Yeah. So let's talk about some positive sleep thoughts, right? So here's a few examples that come from prior classes that I've had the pleasure of teaching. So the first one, in most cases, the worst thing that may happen if I don't sleep well is that my mood might be impaired during the day. So how does that sound versus maybe, oh my gosh, I'm not going to be able to work. I'm not going to be able to get anything done. I have so many things to do tomorrow. I'm never going to sleep. Or if I wake up after about 5.5 hours of sleep, I've gotten my core sleep at least, right? At least I know that my deep sleep is taken care of. I might be a little tired, but my core sleep has been met. Or it's normal to initially feel alert if I awaken at the beginning and end of a dream. Drowsiness will soon follow. So telling yourself it's normal to wake up in the middle of the night, but I'm going to get tired again. And you could add to that, if I don't get tired, I'm going to get out of bed after 30 minutes. And then when I'm tired, I'll go back to bed and sleep will come. So figuring out in your own words what's true and real for you, or what true and might be possible for you. My sleep will be improving as I learn these behavioral techniques. That's a good one. And I'm probably getting more sleep than I think I am. That one is crucial because, like I said, we don't know exactly how much sleep we're getting. But if I tell myself I'm probably getting more sleep than I think I am, that reduces the stress response in my body. If I hear myself saying that versus, oh my God, I'm never going to fall asleep, right? Like those have 2 different feelings in my body. I can feel my stress. I'm never going to fall asleep. I'm never going to fall asleep. I feel the stress rise. But if I say I'm probably getting more sleep than I think I am, I'm like, oh, well, I can take a deep breath if I tell myself that. So what we tell ourselves really does matter. And a little bit more on the subjective estimates of sleep. So poor sleepers make errors in time estimations due to the changes in our perception. So we're not able to really understand, and the last thing we want is to be watching the clock all night and trying to say, okay, well, what time did I wake up and how long was I awake and what did I do? And I didn't get to sleep. I only got, 5.25 and not 5.5 hours. We don't want to start doing that kind of estimation. But time seems longer under unpleasant circumstances. So the longer we're in bed, the longer the time seems. And it's a self-perpetuating cycle. And we often overestimate the time it takes to fall asleep by 30 minutes, which is a pretty big estimation, right? A pretty big error in our own judgment. And we underestimate the total amount of sleep by 1 hour. So that's also a big number. So by recognizing that we're getting more sleep than we think, what happens is that you reduce the negative sleep thoughts, and then you'll begin to sleep better. So it's this interplay of behaviors and thoughts that begin to contribute to overall improvements in sleep. And to look at some of the numbers and statistics around good sleepers versus people who are having challenges around sleeping. So people who are good sleepers, quote unquote, they are pretty sleep efficient. What that means is that they are asleep for 95% of the total time that they're in bed and only awake for about 5% of the time that they're in bed. So what we're talking about, and we're going to enter into sleep skill number 2, which is sleep scheduling. So for example, a good sleeper, if I sleep 5 hours and spend, well, this is not the good sleeper example. The good sleeper example is if I'm spending, I'm just going to say 10 hours in bed, I slept 9.5 of those hours. I was only awake for half an hour. So that's an example of a good sleeper. And I did a long number because math is easier that way. But for somebody who's challenged with sleep or a quote unquote bad sleeper, if I sleep 5 hours and spend 10 hours in bed, my sleep time is only 50%. So what the goal is to spend less time in bed until you increase your sleep drive. So you want to start gradually reducing the amount of time you're physically in your bed until your sleep drive or your sleep system starts to be more efficient. So there's a few ways that sleep scheduling can work. The first goal is to get out of bed at the same time every day, no matter what, including weekends and holidays, including if you only slept 5 hours or 3 hours, is that you get out of bed every morning at the exact same time. Because what you're doing is you're training your body to know when to get up. And by reducing the overall amount of time that you're in bed, you're starting to really show your body what you need to do to have really good sleep efficiency. So work towards that 95% of sleep that good sleepers have. So again, you don't want to vary the time you wake up by more than 30 minutes. Sleep skill number 2. So goal number 2, gradually reduce time allotted for sleep so that it more closely matches the amount of sleep one is averaging per night. So what that means is that over time, you reduce the time you allot for sleep by 1 hour per week until the maximum time allotted for sleep is met. So how do you determine the maximum time? You actually determine your maximum allowable time allotted for sleep by adding 1 hour to your average sleep time. And the way that you do that, and I know this sounds like complex math, but it's a lot more straightforward. There's a grid that you can keep, right? And on this grid, it's a sleep log. And on the sleep log, you start to document I went to bed at X time, and I'll show you an example of this in a couple of slides. But by maintaining the sleep log, you start to determine what your current average sleep time is. And so once you have that information, then you'll be able to schedule your sleep in a way that will improve your sleep so that you can be more efficient in the time you allow yourself to be sleeping and in bed. And again, we're working on a few different things. We're working on associating the bed with sleep and not wakefulness. We're working on our thoughts, our positive and negative thoughts around sleep. And now we're moving into scheduling sleep in a way that allows us to improve our overall sleep quality. And goal number 3 of sleep scheduling is don't turn the lights out or go to sleep until the earliest allowable lights out time, no matter how tired you are, right? So when you start tracking your time, you'll be able to see that you are only meant to be going to sleep at, say, 10:30, right? Say you're waking up at 6:30. So you've looked at your average amount of time, and then you've noticed, okay, based on my calculations and my math, my average sleep time, I'm starting to reduce the maximum amount of time that I am spending in bed by 1 hour each week until I start to sleep. And once you start to sleep, then if you feel like you want to try more, you can actually start going to bed earlier. But the other thing you want to eliminate are daytime naps, making sure that you never sleep during the day more than, if you do need to take a nap, more than 20 minutes, because if you sleep more than 20 minutes during the day, it interrupts the sleep cycle. Really important to note that is that naps ideally are eliminated. But if there's something going on physiologically or related to treatment or something like that, obviously it's understandable if there's fatigue. But really thinking about how all of these things work together to improve your sleep. It's not one, it's a cumulative program. It's not just one skill, but it's a great place to start with one skill, with the positive sleep thoughts if you want to start with anything. So this is an example of a weekly sleep log and diary. So ideally, you would spend a week filling out this log. So in this example, you note the time when you went to bed, what time you turned the lights out, how long do you estimate that it took you to fall asleep? So we want to estimate, we don't want you to be watching the clock to get any of these numbers. And then how many times did you wake up during the night? About how long cumulatively do you feel that you were awake during the night? So maybe you were up 4 times to use the restroom or whatnot, and maybe altogether you were awake 60 minutes. And then what time did you wake up? And this is an important one. What time did you wake up and what time did you get out of bed? Because those are 2 separate things. Because we also don't want to be laying in bed in the morning. And importantly, don't spend time in bed during the day, right? Like I said, bed is for nighttime sleep and sexual activity, and that's it. It is not a place to be during the day. Go on the sofa, find another chair, and start to train. It's, you start to train the association with your body, with the bed, and with sleep. So if you're doing a million other things in the bed during the day, like reading or watching TV or checking your phone or working, you really want to be out of bed and out of bedroom if that's possible in your home. And then you calculate how many hours did you sleep and if you took any medications. I know a lot of people receive prescriptions for things like Ativan for sleep or Tramadol or gabapentin or different drugs. The research in this book really talks about how medications can be effective and can detract from effective sleep. So if you have more interest in that, I recommend you check out the book that I mentioned. So here's an example, and I apologize in advance if it's really overcomplicating this. So if Bella reports an average of 5 hours of sleep from 11 p.m. to 8 a.m., but allots 9 hours of sleep, then Bella's maximum time allotted for sleep per our goal would be 6 hours, because her average is 5 hours that she tracked over the week, and we want to add 1 hour to that. So that's the average sleep goal is 6 hours. Bella starts with a time allotted for sleep goal of 8 hours for 1 week, the following week 7 hours, and the week after that 6 hours. So it's a gradual reduction by 1 hour each week for the amount of time that she spends in bed, because we don't want to go from her having 9 hours in bed directly to 6 hours in bed. We want to taper that over 3 weeks, because we only want to reduce the time she spends in bed by 1 hour each week until she gets to her goal of 6 hours in bed. And I know this math can be a little daunting. It might not make sense the first go round, and we'll have time for questions after. I know there's some questions in the room, but ideally, if the average is 5 hours, we don't want to be in bed more than 6 hours. And she was allotting 9 hours. So we want to reduce that over time. So I will definitely come back to this and we'll have questions. So no problem on that. But what might be happening as we start to reduce the amount of time that Bella spends in bed awake is that she might find that she doesn't need to reduce the time allotted if her average sleep time starts to increase. Because what happens sometimes, the less time we spend in bed, the more our sleep will increase, because now there's less opportunity. So ideally, what wants to happen in our sleep and wakefulness cycle is that we start to balance them out by gradually reducing time awake in the bed. And then if that starts to happen, then you recalculate. So you keep tracking over the weeks of how it's going, and then you recalculate what the average sleep time is, because you might meet somewhere in the middle, right? So her average sleep time might increase from 6 hours to maybe 7 hours. And so by tracking that, you have the data and the information to determine what the right time for you to go to sleep is and wake up, and making sure you're not spending more than 30 minutes before you are falling asleep and 30 minutes after you wake up in bed. So there's a few tips to reduce the allotted time for sleep. So what you want to do is prevent early bedtime by using bright lights and activity, housekeeping, maybe light movement if that's possible. During the hour before the new bedtime, engage in some kind of relaxing and wind down activity until it's time to go in the bed. You might want to use caffeine in the morning to promote earlier rising times, and working with your doctor too around steroids if that's a contributing factor to your sleep challenges. And then pair the earlier arising time with a pleasurable activity. So when you wake up, you do something pleasurable, like have a cup of tea for yourself or something that brings you pleasure. And then, as I said, limit naps. This is 45 minutes, and don't nap later than 4 p.m. So really limit napping as much as possible and not after 4. So the third sleep skill we're going to cover today before we have time for Q&A is the relaxation response. And the relaxation response is an important piece of improving quality of sleep and reducing symptoms of insomnia. The relaxation response counteracts the stress response. And as I mentioned earlier, that stress is a massive contributing factor to sleep issues. So the relaxation response is a quieting response. It's physiological and mental. And what happens is that the relaxation response starts to reduce stress hormones in the body, like cortisol and adrenaline. It starts to allow for the body to actually relax and kind of let down. Kind of, if you take a really deep breath or practice deep breathing for a while, you'll notice that the body feels different. Maybe your shoulders aren't so up and tight. Maybe you're able to just feel a connection with the floor or the chair that you're sitting in. So the relaxation response is extremely important to counteract the stress response that's the normal part of cancer treatment. So what the intention or goal is to find balance in the stress and the relaxation response. So we want to reduce the responsivity of the stress response in the body, because right now, going through treatment or post-treatment, wherever we are in the cancer journey, the body is so primed to that fight or flight response because you don't know when you might get a piece of information. Getting a diagnosis in itself is a stressful thing, and it will, trigger a fight or flight response, which is acute stress for the body and the mind. So the relaxation response lowers the heart rate, muscle tension, and blood pressure, among other things. So daytime practice and nighttime practice are always good ideas. And they don't have to be what you might imagine of like a yogi sitting on a cushion with your hands in like some kind of pose and just sitting there doing nothing. The interesting thing is that a lot of people believe that meditation, for example, is about clearing the mind. That's not exactly the goal of meditation or the relaxation response. The goal or one of the outcomes is that we learn how to focus better. So by kind of building up the relaxation response, we learn to have more choice about what we focus on in any given moment. So that includes our positive and negative sleep thoughts, right? We start to notice we're having a negative sleep thought. Well, if we're practicing the relaxation response, we start to say, hey, I just noticed that was a negative sleep thought. Let me see if I can find a positive sleep thought. Let me see if I can do that for myself, right? So we start to notice that these three techniques are very much related. And the hope is that working these three skills together will improve sleep over time. So you can practice the relaxation response at home. You can listen to a recording of any kind of meditation for 10 minutes a day. There's a lot of free meditations on YouTube. The one I really like is there's an app called Insight Timer that I love. There's tens or hundreds of thousands of meditation recordings, and you can find one that's 10 minutes. It can be anything, but it's just 10 minutes. And then you can designate every day a practice time. So maybe the pleasurable activity you do when you wake up is 10 minutes of listening to a meditation for the day. And maybe you do that for 10 minutes before you fall asleep. So just building the habit of reducing stress in your body by listening to a recording of some kind that helps you. For some people, it might be a 10-minute recording of waves that can help them fall asleep, or nature sounds. Yeah, or it could be anything, right? It could be anything. There's so many things. And what you want to do for the relaxation response at home is to allow an hour wind down period before bed, as we talked about. And then you can practice relaxation techniques at bedtime, or if you wake up during the middle of the night, you could do any type of meditation, right? You could put a recording on when you get out of bed. If you're in bed longer than 30 minutes, you can listen to something that helps you start to feel sleepy again. One of the things that helps the body relax is to take a brisk walk, if that's possible, 3 to 4 hours before bedtime, to keep your room cooler. That often helps us to sleep better. Definitely to avoid caffeine after 10 a.m. and to avoid the exposure to blue light, so to tablets and phones. We really want to keep those out of the bedrooms because it really can disrupt our sleep cycle. So what we're going to do is have a practice of the relaxation response. So find yourself a comfortable position right now, however you want to sit. Everybody in the room's in a chair. For those of you who are at home, if you're lying down or reclining, just find a comfortable position in your chair where you feel comfortable and you feel supported by whatever surface you're sitting on. And whether you're sitting or lying down, just finding some way that you feel supported in your body. You start to feel the seat beneath you. You feel the feet on the floor, and you can close your eyes if you like, or you can leave them kind of at half mast if you're focusing on a spot in front of you, and of maybe looking softly, lowering and softening your gaze, looking towards the floor if that's more comfortable. And as you allow your eyes to relax and rest, and just notice the position of your body, if there's any way it needs to be more comfortable or supported in this moment, just taking that moment to feel maybe 5 or 10% more comfortable. And as you just notice, you can direct your attention to the toes and the feet. You might notice a sensation of warmth or tingling, or maybe heaviness in the feet. You will notice the surface beneath your feet. You might notice your shoes, your socks, any texture, any surface that's beneath the feet. You might notice pressure. And as you just kind of notice the sensations that you're having in your feet and your toes, just becoming aware of any sensations, you might gently begin to feel a wave of relaxation moving through the feet, the toes, the heels, the ankles. And it might even help to visualize relaxation moving through the feet as you just allow yourself to be in this present moment. Noticing whatever sensations of relaxation that may be present in your feet. And now, as you feel or visualize the relaxation from your feet, moving up through the calves, into the knees, noticing relaxation in the lower legs, from the knees all the way down to the feet and the toes. Feeling the relaxation move up to the thighs, the hamstrings. Taking time to notice how relaxed the legs are becoming. And just noticing the sensations in the entire legs, from the hips all the ways to the toes. There might be a settling in the hamstrings against the chair, or the legs against the surface. And feeling any relaxation move up to the belly, the lower torso, the back, the upper torso, the shoulders. Noticing any relaxation that might be present in the torso. Relaxation moving from the upper torso, the lower torso, the back and belly, pelvis, the legs, the feet, the toes. Noticing your torso becoming more and more relaxed. And as you notice that, feeling relaxation moving out to the hands, where again you may notice a sensation of tingling or warmth or the temperature of the air in the room. Perhaps you feel the hands move against the body or the chair, the bed or the sofa, right where you are. Feeling or visualizing the relaxation moving up to the forearms, through the elbows, the upper arms, back to the shoulders. Taking a few moments to focus on the relaxation. Next, relaxation moves through the shoulders to the neck, the jaw, cheeks, the eyes, the forehead, the scalp. Just allowing the relaxation or whatever sensations are present in the body right now. Not trying to do or change anything, just noticing what's present in the body. From the top of the head to the tip of the fingers, to the toes and every place in between. Noticing that relaxation may have moved throughout the body. The body is becoming more and more relaxed and at ease. There's more peace in this moment. You might notice that your breathing has changed. Perhaps it's slower, deeper, into the belly, feeling the breath move the belly in and out with each inhalation, each exhalation. Just noticing, not trying to change the breath, just noticing as you inhale, the stomach expands. As you exhale, the stomach contracts. Just taking a moment for the next few cycles of breath to notice the movement of the abdomen in and out. It knows what to do as the breath expands the torso and contracts it. If the mind drifts, just gently bringing the attention back to the sensations in the torso, noticing the physical sensations of the inhalation and exhalation. Simply letting any thoughts go and returning the attention to the breath. You might be breathing more rhythmically and abdominally. Just continuing to notice the sensations. And the relaxation that you might be experiencing as you just focus on the sensations of the body, the breath, and relaxation. And at your own pace, taking a few more breaths. Gently opening your eyes, moving the body as if it needs to move or wants to move. And just noticing how it is to be here now, how it might be different in this moment of relaxation. Noticing any sensations. So, as I mentioned, relaxation response doesn't always have to be a guided meditation. There's so many ways to elicit the relaxation response. It can include intentional breathing in the belly, gardening, prayer, noting pleasantness in your life, just noticing things around you that might be pleasant, grounding mantras, some kind of mindful movement. Some people enjoy yoga or different types of movement, dance, and being mindful in that moment can really spark the relaxation response. Spending time with pets, in nature, some type of creative experience like writing or music or art, and of course, meditation. So there's many ways to start to develop the muscle of building the relaxation response in a response to or to counteract and balance the stress response. Here are a few resources that I wanted to mention before we switch to Q&A. So there are wonderful things you can Google, like progressive muscle relaxation, body scan, self-hypnosis. There's great things on YouTube. I really like YouTube, a lot of free content. Various apps like Calm, Headspace, and Insight Timer. Insight Timer is free. The other two are for pay. And there's other groups, of course, cancer support communities, and the book that I mentioned is Say Goodnight to Insomnia by Greg Jacobs. So that is my presentation for today. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to question and answer.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Jennifer. We
Yes.
do have a question in the chat first, and I can then ask people here. The question is, can you address long-term sleeping pills, i.e. Ambien benefits and downsides?
So I am not a doctor, first and foremost. So with the medications that are prescribed by your doctor, I'm going to redirect that medication question to your prescriber. The book Say Goodnight to Insomnia does talk about medication tapering quite extensively. And the author definitely has opinions about tapering medications. But again, as a social worker, medications are not my area of expertise, so I don't want to speak out of scope. But I do want to let you know that if you're interested in medication tapering, the book that I mentioned will have more information on that.
I'll get right to your Rebel moment. Is there anyone here in person that wanted to ask Jennifer a question? One, and then, yeah, go ahead.
When you're counting the number of sleep hours or
Yeah.
minutes,
Yeah.
do you add naps to that? How do you?
Um,
is that just consecutive sleep?
So the question is, when you're counting the number of hours, do you add naps to that? I would certainly keep track of naps. If you're, and also try to avoid naps longer than 45 minutes or after 4 o'clock. So I would definitely keep track of that. But we really want to look at the number of hours that you're spending in bed, and then look at the average amount of hours that you're sleeping, and then work backwards from that.
Consecutive hours?
No, cumulative. So what you're doing is you're subtracting any time that you're awake during the night. You're subtracting any time you're staying in bed before you fall asleep and after you wake up. So that will give you the average. So that's how the math is calculated. And I can actually send to you the log,
Perfect.
the
that'd be
sleep log
wonderful.
sheet, so you can send that out.
And once I do receive it, I can email everyone as long as I know who you are. We have a question from Deborah, and then I'll call on to you, Rebecca, and then I'll go back to the chat. Deborah, your question?
So why do they say when you get older, you need less sleep? I always thought sleep is one of the most important things, especially for healing.
Yeah,
And I like to get at least 8 hours.
yeah.
Sometimes 9. But it takes me at least an hour to fall asleep in bed. But then once I fall asleep, I don't want to wake up in the morning.
I hear that.
Alexa plays my morning music, wakes me up. I could be in bed just relaxing to the music for an hour.
Yeah.
Now, is that bad?
Well, are you, yeah, so the question is it bad to enjoy sleeping more? Or,
Oh, well, first of all, saying when I'm older,
yeah,
you only need 5 hours. Because especially the cancer patients,
yeah.
sleep is when you heal.
Well, I agree with you that sleep is really healing and restorative. Yeah, I'm not saying that you should go from 8 to 5. I'm saying that some of the research shows that as we age, we might need less sleep. So, but I'm not endorsing that we go from 8 hours to 5 hours. No. Yeah, it's totally great. If you can sleep 8 hours, wonderful.
Do you think I gave up the hour that I stay in bed and I wake up and just feel good, relax, listening to music on my phone, whatever? If I gave that up, do you think I would fall asleep? It wouldn't take me an hour to fall asleep.
Well, so the question is, if I didn't spend time an hour in the morning after I woke up in bed, would I fall asleep sooner in the evening? Yeah, you could try it. I mean, the worst thing that's going to happen is if you start to only stay in bed in the morning 30 minutes and experiment with that for a week or so and see if that changes anything about the time it takes for you to fall asleep. So the only way to know is to experiment. Yeah, is really to experiment. Yeah. Yeah.
Rebecca, you had a question? Rebecca, you had a question?
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Hi, Rebecca.
Hi, Jennifer. So I'm seeing a sleep doctor right now because I have insomnia and I have sleep apnea. Okay. With sleep apnea, they're recommending a device, CPAP or an oral device and stuff like that to help my apnea. So my thinking is insomnia is different than sleep apnea, correct? Okay.
Yeah, sleep apnea is an obstructive disorder. There's something happening physiologically. So if you're under the care of a sleep doctor, they would be treating you or offering a CPAP if they did a sleep study on you and found that there was something physiologically going on for you that was interrupting your ability to breathe while you were sleeping.
Yes, and all that's been done. But my question is, once I get, like, say, a CPAP machine, and that's going to help my apnea, the insomnia part of it, is it like, am I going to have to learn all the skills that you taught us today to get to sleep and then stay asleep through the CPAP? Or how does that work?
Sure. So sleep apnea and CPAP machines are definitely a bit out of my area and scope of expertise. I'm not sure how wearing a CPAP mask or machine, how that will impact your sleep. Some people find the white noise of the CPAP machine comforting and it helps them fall asleep, similarly to listening to nature noises or having white noise in the background. But I really can't comment on how your insomnia will interact with using a CPAP machine. But I would definitely ask my sleep doctor that question.
Okay, yeah, you just kind of like jiggled my head to find that answer. So yes, I'll go back to my sleep doctor for that.
Yeah,
question.
wonderful. Best of luck with those solutions.
Thank you, Jennifer.
My pleasure. Nice to meet you.
Next question in the chat Any tips if someone has to sleep in an unfamiliar position, like on their side, due to pain when side sleeping, which is their usual, on their back when their usual position is on their side?
Yeah, that's definitely one of the challenges around cancer and sleeping is the tumor burden can really impact the ability to sleep well because it's just there's pain physiologically. So if you have a supportive care medicine physician, I would collaborate with your supportive care medicine physician in your cancer institute. So maybe talk to them about what some of the things are that are happening for you in regards to finding a challenging position to sleep or making sleep more physically comfortable. And they might be able to recommend some interventions from that perspective. But I definitely recommend finding wherever you're receiving cancer treatment, your supportive care medicine physician. Or in some institutions, they're called palliative care. They manage symptoms like pain and discomfort, and they might be able to partner with you to offer you some solutions to make sleep more comfortable in any position.
Thank you, Jennifer.
It's my pleasure.
Are there any more questions on, yes, in person here? Heather, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to share something that I do that really helped me.
Mhm.
I use something called Hug Sleep. Have you heard of it, Jennifer?
Not familiar with it.
It's been life changing for me. I found it during the pandemic. They were on Sleep Tank or Shark Tank. Sleep Tank. And the I got sleep on the brain. Totally. The website is, and I obviously don't get any kickbacks from this. I wish I did, because I tell everybody, but their website is hugsleep.com in case you're interested. But it's like a swaddle for an adult. So as long as you don't mind being enclosed and you get into it and it's so comfortable and they have science behind it. And it's just like a weighted blanket, except it's not weighted. And you can travel with it, which is amazing, and it washes really easily, and you're like in it kind of like a cocoon, and it's amazing. And literally, you guys, when I get into it and turn on the Calm app, I'm asleep within minutes.
Okay.
Within minutes. Now, I don't have a lot of the stuff going on that you had mentioned.
Mhm.
I have a lot of stuff in my brain going on. But once I turn off the phone, turn off the TV and get in it, I'm not kidding you, it's changed my life.
And if you look in the chat, for those of you online, one of our participants recommended the link that was just put in the chat for Hug Sleep. So that's what one of our participants here in the room recommended that worked for her.
You get into it, so it goes lengthwise, and I put it all the way up to my shoulders, and then I'm literally like, I'm a side sleeper. So I get into it and I'm like cradling it, and it's like you're kind of like you're in the womb. I mean, the first time I got in it, my heart was beating faster. I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. It changed my life.
Just in case you couldn't hear online, she is a side sleeper and it's like an adult swaddle.
Rayon.
Um,
Not a natural material, unfortunately, but it is made in the USA.
it is hugsleep.com, yeah.
Yeah.
So
Are there any other questions
Yeah,
in
right over here.
person? Oh, yes. If you don't mind.
Can you expand a little bit on the concept behind it? It's called ASMR, so I'm sure you've heard of it.
Yes.
Autonomous, what else? Autonomous sensory meridian response.
Yeah, so I don't know a ton about ASMR, but I do know there's a lot of videos on YouTube about ASMR. ASMR is when people record themselves doing things. I like to watch interior design videos on YouTube, and sometimes they'll have an ASMR moment when they just record no talking, but they record like peeling off the tape that was the border of the painting, they were doing in the room, and it's just the sounds. So it's about listening to the ambient sounds in the room and really focusing on that. So it becomes a more sensory experience. Some people find it really relaxing, but it really depends on the person because some people get triggered by it. But if you Google ASMR, there's a lot of videos on it, and it's just, somebody told me about one for eating. Like they eat alone at like 4 a.m. And so they found this person who did ASMR, and it's literally this woman who records herself eating. So you're listening to somebody chomping, which for me would be so irritating. But for her, she found it comforting to have a companion while she was eating and listening to somebody else eating. And she felt really connected with that. So there's a lot of different ASMR content and videos that you might enjoy exploring depending on what your preferences are. Maybe, like, yeah. Mhm.
We have last question here in person. Yes, Lisa.
Talk a bit more about core sleep and how much time that is. I tend to wake up kind of like clockwork after 3 hours sleep, and I don't think that's
Yeah.
enough.
Yeah.
And I'll stay awake maybe 2 hours before I fall back.
So sleep cycles go in 90-minute cycles typically. So if you're stacking up multiple 90-minute cycles, so 3 hours, the question, by the way, was if I'm sleeping 3 hours and then waking up like clockwork and then going back to sleep, can you talk about core sleep? That was the question. So sleep cycles go in 90 minutes where you get the full cycle all the way to REM sleep. And so if you're sleeping for 3 hours, you're getting ideally 2 hours of sleep cycle, and then you're taking a break, and then you might get another couple of cycles of those 90-minute cycles. So does that answer your question? That might all add up to 5.5 hours. Yeah, great question. Yeah,
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
we have one more question.
Yes.
Real quick, how important is REMS?
So it's the part of the deep sleep cycle. So we're wanting to try and the body maximizes automatically the deep sleep cycles so that it goes to deep sleep. And if we go back to the slide where it shows the different sleep cycles, it's important. It's
So if we don't get it every day, or should we get it every day?
well, most people do if you're asleep for 90 minutes or more. So most people get at least one REM cycle if you're asleep for 90 minutes or more. You're welcome.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Jennifer,
It's my
for being here
pleasure.
with us today. And for those online and in person, I'm going to